is the wife always entitled to half of my assets if we divorce? So, because it's a pretty complex issue. So, with regards to your question, whether the wife is entitled to half your assets, it really depends on which law. Now, which law it is. So, let's kind of, for the purposes of this session, break it down. So, one option is if your marriage, for example, is Muslim marriage, then you could resort to what's called the UAE personal status law. That personal status law is based on principles of Sharia. Under Sharia, whatever is yours is yours, whatever is hers. So in other words, in that case, your wife will not be entitled to half your assets. She will only be entitled to keep those assets in her name right now, and whatever is is in your name, those are your assets. So that's under the UAE personal status law, which again are based on principles of Sharia. Now, if you divorce, if you're not Muslim couple, then you have the option of getting divorced under the UAE civil personal status law. So under the personal status law, it's still kind of evolving law, if you will. So the law is in print, but the application, the interpretation of that law is evolving. So there's a lot more to kind of to fill in terms of details. But in the meantime, whenever any questions arise with regards to the application of the civil personal status law, the courts often always supplement from the Sharia principles as well. And as per that law, this is the civil personal status law. As per this law, the law says that basically that upon their sort of termination, the parties' interests are divided sort of equally. Right now, it talks a lot about in the context of children specifically, but it also talks about certain assets, but it doesn't really delve into exactly what that means. So there's no such thing as there's no specific provision about assets being divided in half, but it's basically about that whatever the sort of family or the couple had kind of amassed during their marriage is considered to be their marital assets, and so there is some kind of a division of assets, but it's not really specifically half. So this is where what we have seen so far is where the courts supplement principles of Sharia to ultimately basically hold the same principle of whatever is in your name is in your name, whatever is in her name is in her name. However, they're starting to supplement more and add more compensation on the basis of some of these kind of more general provisions in the civil law. So there's that second option. It's the UAE civil personal status law. Again, it's still evolving. And the third option is for you to request the application of your own law, whatever that law may be. So let's say it's Indian law, right? Or it's Russian law, or it's French law. So that also is an option. The UAE can, and the law specifically provides for expats the choice of opting for their own law. However, it's easier said than done, because ultimately what you need to do is you need to present your own law. Let's say it's Indian law or French law. You have to present it to the courts, and you ultimately have to explain or educate the courts about what that French law is like, or how under the French law or Indian law you would be divorced. But that option is there. So that's the third type of law. And then obviously a lot of people under whose jurisdictions, I guess sort of original jurisdiction, if the assets are split in half, they would always want to opt for the application of that law. So for example, France, if you wanted to apply French law, then the French law does allow for example, for division of assets, half of the assets. So that's an example of where, in that case, if you apply the laws of your own country, and your country's laws do usually provide for a split of assets, then that would be an option for you to follow.